Hi, today we're going to talk about an introduction to information literacy. And to begin, we're going to actually start with what you need to know about the idea of information literacy. Information literacy can loosely be defined as the ability to identify, find, evaluate, and use information effectively. Now, in today's world, with increasing access to digital resources, we find ourselves typically inundated with access to tools and resources and different types of information. So it becomes increasingly important for you to be able to evaluate the quality, the credibility, and validity of what you find or come across online. You'll also hear this term used or under different names sometimes. So things like digital literacy, media literacy, research skills all fall under the very big umbrella that is what we will call information literacy. Now let's consider why this matters to you as a student. As I said earlier, the first kind of idea is that you have access to this unprecedented number of tools and resources. You can go to libraries, you can go on Amazon and purchase books, you can go to Google, and with that comes this amazing opportunity for you to learn about absolutely anything you're interested in, but it's also incredibly overwhelming when you type a word in a search engine and you come back with millions of results. So today, I'm hoping you'll leave with the idea of understanding that when you're doing research online, you want to be strategic in making sure that you have a game plan for how to go through and find the best possible resources instead of just picking the top 3 that pop up when you hit enter in a Google search. I also obviously and always want you to value lifelong learning, which means that you're constantly refining your research skills and figuring out better ways of finding credible, valuable information that will make you smarter. One of those tools is to be critical of what you consume, because a lot of times what we come across online is really advertisements or revenue based, and you want information that's going to actually help you learn, not just information that's pushed out by people who are trying to con you or make money or convince you of something. You want to make sure that your research is giving you access to as many different viewpoints so that you're making your own choices. And lastly, and I have already alluded to this, you also want to do your best to avoid misinformation and proliferating or reusing information that isn't entirely correct. So we want to look for things like bias in writers, or look at how an organization that publishes something might have a vested interest in convincing you of a certain position. Now, the first skill for any researcher is to begin with a clear purpose, and from that purpose create a strategy. Now, in our class, whenever we're doing a writing assignment, we always start with a question, right? We take our topic and we turn that topic into a question or set of questions that helps us refine our thinking. Research is much the same way. The research question, helps guide you in terms of what type of knowledge you're looking for. Now, once you have this question, you'll start to know what types of tools what types of articles and research you need. Now, when you hit the internet or the library or a bookstore or wherever you're searching, you'll know I'm looking for historical documents, or I'm looking for scientific studies, or I'm looking for opinion pieces, or I'm looking for primary sources, interviews, and newspapers. And once you know that, you can filter through a lot of what you're actually finding. And this helps you so that you're finding relevant articles that are actually going to serve your purpose. The next thing that you'll want to do, and this is part of the strategy that you're creating, is to consider where you want to look. Now, we live in a world where it's very simple to just jump on Google, and Google's wonderful, or can be wonderful, but you also want to think of other opportunities or other resources that might be better suited to you than just Google. Google can be a great place to start, just like Wikipedia can be a great place to start, but it might not be the ultimate destination that leads you to the answers to your questions and the right type of research that you need. And really getting good answers to those first questions is ultimately what's going to help you not waste your time going through the pages and pages and pages of stuff that can come up in a simple Google search. The last thing that will help you strategically find articles is to think of how many you need. Now, the fewer articles you need for an assignment, the bigger the burden is to find really strong articles, maybe lengthier articles, because they're going to give you more information. If you need a lot of research, you might be able to stagger the types of articles that you need. But again, having that strategy that clearly outlines I need 2 of this type of article and 3 of this type of article is going to really help you not waste your time reading through or skimming through a bunch of things that you aren't ultimately going to use. Now, when we're searching online in databases, on Google, wherever, a special thing to kind of think about are the keywords that you're using. Now, keywords are just basically the words that you use to guide any sort of search engine in trying to find you what you want. It helps the computer basically go through articles and look for that word in the articles. So when you're deciding what keywords to put into the search engine, you want to think about being as precise and accurate as you possibly can. Now, sometimes as you go through the research process, you actually find better keywords for what you're really searching for, what you've realized you really need. So adjusting your keywords mid-research is actually a really good strategy. The other thing that can happen is that you add more keywords to help you narrow a search. Sometimes if you put just one word in, like stem cell, that's 2 words actually. If you put one word in like science, you're going to get millions and millions of search results. Whereas if you narrow down a particular branch of science or a particular subject in science, you'll start cutting down the amount of stuff that you get. Also, when you're using databases especially, you can filter the search results that you get. Don't be afraid to use that. Sometimes it seems scary when we only get 6 results, but a lot of times that's actually better suited to what you're trying to do because you don't need 100 articles. You need the 4 or 5 or 10 or whatever that actually fit in with what you need. And lastly, most search engines will allow you to put together or string together words using quotation marks so that the search engine knows to look for a particular phrase instead of the words individually. And a lot of times this will fine-tune and help you actually find something that is more suited to your research goals. Now, once you've found a bunch of articles that seem to fit in with what you want, you're going to want to evaluate those sources. And when we evaluate sources, there are typically 3 things that we're looking at. The first is the validity of the source. So you want to think about things like where the source was published, who published it, when it was published, if the article seems well researched. Those are all going to basically give the author, and thus the article, credibility in terms of this person knows what he or she is talking about. The second is usefulness. Now, I really urge you when you find an article to read through the abstract or summary before you really dig into the full text of the article, because that helps you determine right off the bat, does this do what I need it to? There's no need for you to read through a bunch of articles that are super loosely related to what you need. And this should become apparent pretty quickly. Just because an article mentions your keyword 100 times doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to give you what you need for your project or for your paper. And then third is accuracy, and this is where you actually really have to read through things. Some things to consider with accuracy would definitely be tied to validity, like the credentials of the writer, looking for overt bias or any connection where the writer seems to have a vested interest in articulating a particular position. You can also consider things like primary versus secondary, whether or not the writer has first-hand knowledge or is just re-reporting something out, and how well researched or how well how much the writer actually really knows about the subject, which he or she is speaking about. Now, all three of these work together and overlap in a lot of ways, but basically you want to think, is this the best source for what I'm trying to do? Now, once you've found your sources, you want to think about how you're going to use them. And one of the big things that comes up when we're using secondary sources is this big term, plagiarism. And we probably will spend a lot more time talking about this, but I want to touch on it here. The idea of plagiarism is very loosely defined as using some or all of another person's work and claiming it as your own. Now, you want to avoid this because it's a form of stealing, and as an academic, it can ruin your life. Now, what you want to do instead of trying to take people's work and claim it as your own is to use other people's work to bolster your own ideas. And the way that you do this is citing the work from other people that you use and then providing commentary and analysis on those pieces of work. Now, we've talked about MLA citations, which is what you would use in your essay or in your paper to give credit to the original author. You want to make sure that you include the name in the parenthetical citation and typically a page number, which will correspond to your works cited page that ultimately ties everything together and lets the reader know where this originally came from. Now, learning about information literacy and how to be an awesome researcher is a lifelong process, and you'll learn additional skills and refine your skill set the more that you do this. There are an amazing amount of resources online to help you learn those skills and to teach you about how to hone in and refine them. A couple that I find are very useful: the Purdue Online Writing Lab. We use this all the time when we talk about all things MLA, but it's also a great resource for all things writing in the academic world. The second is called Common Sense Education. It's a site that really talks about how to use online tools, and they have a great section on their site about digital citizenship and specifically information literacy and the skills that go along with creating your own information literacy. Our school library website is another great place to help you find tools for research and also tools on how to use your research more effectively. And last but certainly not least, a resource that's frequently overlooked is using an adult. Your teachers, the librarians at school, librarians at local libraries, they are all there to help you hone in on these skills, and when you get stuck, to guide you. So make sure and ask them if you get stuck. And here is a model of a works cited page. These are the resources that I used to put this together. Thank you so much for listening. That's it.